Welcome to the Family on 3 podcast, an opportunity to have meaningful conversations with community members, authentic leaders, and folks who simply understand what it means to be a good teammate. On today's episode, I am fortunate to be joined by Matt Triplett, a former Ohio State men's lacrosse player and current head boys lacrosse coach at St. Francis de Sales High School here in Columbus, Ohio, where he has been for the past 15 years and has won 2 state titles. He's also spearheaded recent efforts around the topic of mental health within the lacrosse community and beyond. So without further ado, episode 1 with Matt Triplett. So first and foremost, thank you for hopping on this call, video, whatever you want to talk about. Want to call this. I've been following you on social media, and I saw you had a group conversation, which we'll get into a little bit later with some other coaches, which got me thinking we need to have a vehicle by which we can start to talk to folks and let them share their stories about what they're doing and their thoughts on this situation. And obviously we've known each other for a while now, and you're the first person that came to mind. So I appreciate your willingness to hop on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talk about some of the challenges and opportunities, in all honesty, that this very challenging set of circumstances present us. But before we get into that, I will ask you, as the father of small children, not how many Disney Plus movies or shows you've watched, but what is the top choice right now in the Triplett house?
Well, it depends on before or after bedtime. Before bedtime, it's, usually every now and then it's the Frozens, it's the Moanas. We kind of go between Pixar and old school Disney.
Nice.
We made it about 5 minutes into Fantasia. She nixed that. But after the kids go to bed, it's usually either Star Wars type of a thing with Mandalorian, or it's any of the Marvels.
So now where are you in Mandalorian?
I've watched the series like twice now already.
Nice.
3 times almost. It's yeah.
So I guess that answers the question if you think it's any good.
Oh, I love it. Love it. I mean, when we were working out in the weight rooms back when it first came through, the kids, we would all talk about the episode after we left lifting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. I love the before bedtime and after bedtime piece.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's
like. We're all living that dream. But again, as we talked about in setting this up, one of the things we wanted to discuss in this, what hopefully will be a series of conversations with different folks, is some ways that people are dealing with these challenges, some thoughts that coaches especially have. Is we're both coaches, and it's such a unique thing to lose a season the way that we have, and to be away from our student athletes, which are like extensions of our family. With that being said, one thing we've talked about before this even happened is, as athletes, these kids, they want to compete, they want to engage, they want to be around each other. That's what athletes do. And right now we're in a situation where that's literally what they can't do. And as a coach, maybe even as a parent, how would you talk with your guys about handling the challenges of having to be apart when you're wired to be together?
Right. Well, I think the biggest thing is, number one, the technology is a beautiful thing. If this happened 10 years ago, we wouldn't be able to do the amount of video conferences, the Zooms, FaceTime, any of that stuff. So, so that's a big thing, and I would talk to my boys about handling this by, number one, as an athlete, one of your first priorities is maintaining discipline, right? So, you got to resist the urge to get together. Those are the rules of that we've been given. And unfortunately, in these circumstances, you got to find another way to get together, connect, if it's a large Google Hangout or whatever it might be. But, I told my guys the other night, I'm like, look, you guys might want to get together for a sleepover or whatever, but just remember, so-and-so lives with his grandmother. So if he comes over, he brings it home to his grandmother. You guys might not show anything, and all of a sudden grandma's sick. Right. So I think a big thing is just, guys, it's about maintaining discipline, work out on your own, make sure you maintain the discipline to be able to do that. But, there's definitely ways that they can get together, either on like group chats, video conferencing, FaceTime, anything where they can visually see somebody. That's kind of the way to do it, I think.
And along those lines, we talk with our guys at Denison all the time about one of the challenges that we always face is, for so many athletes that compete at the highest level of whatever level they're at. So for you guys, you're playing for state championships. We're coaching guys that want to get to the Final Four. For so many of them, it's really who they are at their core, and I think one of the challenges all of these guys face, and right before we hopped on, I was on a call with our leadership council for Denison. And one of the things we talked about was in these times where who you are has been taken away from you, but out of your control. I think one of the challenges we face as coaches is we always talk about control the controllables.
Right.
And this has been taken away from them. So when you look at those guys that on your team that, this is really who they are. What are some of those words of encouragement you can give to them? And to be honest with you, every other kid out there that, is dying a little on the inside because they can't be out competing with their guys. Cause this is really kind of how they define themselves.
Right. Well, I mean, you said it right, perfectly there. It's focus on what you can control. Uncontrollables are always going to be there. There's always going to be variables, but get out, do your stick work. Working out, if it's really part of who they are, it's going to be in their DNA to work out and keep going. Right. So those aren't really the guys that I worry about. I don't worry about. The shooting drills or a lot of those things, because a lot of those guys, they know what's expected of them and they know what to do. But as a coach, for me, it's about making sure that relationship aspect of it is there. Right. And making sure that what I can do is help foster an environment to keep them positive, to keep them in the right mindset, and not necessarily just from a lacrosse standpoint, but from a mental health standpoint, as well as keeping their spirits up. And so I think that it's one of those things. It's not permanent, and it's a unique period in time. It's just one of those things where I tell them focus on the things that's most important right now, and it's the human aspect of why we're doing all this, right? So I told them kind of focus on that, focus on what you can control. That's loving your parents. Right before we got off of the our video chat the other night, I told them, I was like, look, mom and dad are under a lot of stress. Your stress is different than theirs. So if so like I tell them, being married, you pick and choose your fights, right? So I was like, pick and choose your fights with your parents or your siblings wisely, because they're under a lot of stress and you don't need to be causing any more.
Sure. And I think that's, we joke about that, but it's 100% true. I think that, how people process this, how people show how they're processing it, I think can sometimes be great and can sometimes be, for lack of a better word, deceiving. I know in the intro to this, I talked about your work in the mental health space with mental health awareness in Central Ohio over the last couple of years. And I wanted to give you an opportunity because I'm a big believer that one of the lasting impacts that this is going to have is going to actually be in the mental health space. When we get to the fall and winter, that's going to be a new topic that we're talking about. So if you could just obviously a little bit about on a macro level, the stuff you've done within the mental health space, but also some things that not only players can be aware of, but any parents that are listening or watching can be aware of during this time period. Because again, mental health is, as we all know, it's a huge topic of conversation, but it's also a topic that isn't broached easily. And I'm sure that you've experienced that coaching 14 to 18-year-old young men, experience it with 18 to 22-year-old men at Denison all the time. So if you could speak a little bit of that, both, like I said, to the player aspect, but also to the parent aspect.
Sure. So from the player aspect, the biggest thing I would, look at with my guys is, don't dwell on things. Get out of out of ruts if you're in them. But really what I did is, before we went into this thing, I made every kid send me a daily schedule of what they would do during school days as well as during the weekends, right? Because the worst thing you can do as a high schooler is not have a plan in a situation like this. I mean, you need some structure.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of, just reminding them, stick to your schedule, stick to what stick to what you plan to do in these types of situations, because obviously it's a lot different. But the biggest thing with teenage boys is being able to share your feelings. So if you're feeling down, if you're not feeling well, whether girlfriend breaking up, because let's be honest, not every kid is in a Cleaver household where everything's fine and dandy. There's some kids that are staying with people that are stressors in their lives, or they don't have great relationships with parents and things like that.
Sure.
So so they really need to make sure that that they feel that they have a place where they can go ahead and share their feelings, an outlet, if you will. I mean, some of these guys, and that's kind of why I went away from the who they are, and am constantly reminding, hey guys, stay on top of your lacrosse work, stay on top of your works. For some kids who could care less about lacrosse was an outlet for them to get away from bad situations, either at home or school or anything else like that. So from a player standpoint, it's we tell our guys, beginning of every season, we get them used to the fact of being able to tell somebody, I love you. So one of their first homework assignments on the first day when we have our preseason classes, your homework is to go home, tell mom and dad, I love you. And then they get used to being able to say it. And so, by the end of the season, the boys are telling each other they love each other, and whatnot. And the coaches are telling the kids, and just not being afraid of that. Right. So a lot of that is about also building trust between them, so they can go ahead and share, hey man, I'm not feeling okay right now. And not keeping a lot of those feelings in. So a lot of the things that we learned in the mental health class was just flat out listening to somebody can help them in a mental health crisis type of situation, right? So having them share their feelings, let us know if we can, just be an ear to listen to, or someone to text 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. And just be receptive to anything they really want to say. From a parent standpoint, there's a lot of stresses that are out there. It's for the kids, it's loss of time with their friends, it's lost time with teammates, it's lost their season. But when you're dealing with parents, you got the financial aspect of it, you've got the house, you've got the mortgage, you've got maybe a mother-in-law or someone lives with you, right? You're trying to keep them safe. One of the things that has really helped me understand what's happening with parents of my kids in different stresses and ways to think is, when I had my own kids, it completely changes how you think about the world, right? You're not, for me, it's not a possession of, a thing of like, okay, well, if my house gets foreclosed on or whatever, it's my kid has no roof. My kid has nowhere to stay. I could sleep on somebody's couch. So, so a lot of the parents, from a mental health standpoint, I think getting out of a routine, the kids need a routine, the parents getting out of that routine, right? So if you need to go outside, take a walk, fresh air. I personally, after a day being taking care of the kids, as I'm working, going for a drive, sometimes
Yep.
that just helps. You're not going to run into anybody in this type of situation. It's
Sure.
not like the movies where it's airborne. You're going to get it just by breathing it in when you're driving your car. But just something to kind of break up the monotony of the day and just understand, it's here. There's nothing we can do about it, but realize that there's other bigger things that could be happening to you. You have healthy kids. But once you're out of this, just remember that you're not alone. So if you have problems with finances, you have problems with, emotions and things like that, that other people are here to talk about. Adults tell kids to be open and honest with them, but aren't open and honest with each other. Right.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of one of the big things that we talk about, like our boys during season. I share everything I can with them. So if I have a funny moment, a moment that really scares me, or just raw emotion with them, I always tell them and share what's going on, because I want them to be able to trust me and to let me know what's happening. Um, so so kind of one of the things that kind of like helped me was, I actually had posted on social media exactly how I was feeling about all of the situation, right? So in the very beginning, what happened was, in the very first weekend that practice got canceled and, all this, everything kind of went down, my son literally almost died.
Wow.
So yeah, and it had been weighing on me for like 2 weeks. And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, is it what's happening with the virus that's weighing me down, or is it what's happening with my kid? And, social media is one of those things. It was like 11:30 midnight. I was able to type everything out, and it was okay, here's what happened, and I posted it just because I had a lot of people worrying and checking in on me, making sure, hey, are you okay? What's happening?
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
they're like, you sound depressed. And it was the fact that I almost lost my son, and there's just so many what ifs that were out there. And then kind of once I was able to post that and got a lot of responses, people, oh my gosh, thank God, things like that, it kind of helped me reassure me that, everything's okay. There's other people are quote unquote listening. But really the most important one was, and that kind of got me out of the funk, was I woke up to a text from Greg Bice, who had read it. He's like, Trip, he's like, you're a good man. You're a good father. He's like, you're going to do it. Okay. You're going to be fine. Right. So it really was that text message that really kind of got me out of that funk. And it's kind of like, okay, you know what? Yep. Let's just go ahead and tackle everything else head on. So it was, so for a lot of the parents, what kind of got me in that rut was every day thinking the same thing over and over and over again,
Yep.
versus, that kind of that press pause moment, and that thing that were just snapped you out of it. And I was like, okay, you know what? I can move on, and I can deal with all the other stresses as they come along.
Well, I mean, first of all, it's fantastic news as a parent of
Yeah.
young children to another parent of young children. That's, yeah, I can't imagine combining that with this. But one of the things listening to you and using that word that I think is sometimes lost in this is, and I was talking with our guys at Denison an hour ago about this, is how powerful, whether it's a kid to a parent to a kid, a parent to a parent, to just simply ask someone, how are you doing?
Right.
And then just listen. One of the things I think that we are all challenged with in this day and age of instantaneous communication is listening and allowing someone to simply just be open and honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that through this, again, because we are separated, it's so much more challenging to have those meaningful conversations. But I think one of the things that people can benefit just in listening to what you were talking about is being willing to, again, simply just ask, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help?
Mm-hmm.
And then just listening, and not assuming you know the answer, not as jumping to a conclusion, but just being open, being honest, meeting people where they are. And I think one of the things that I've personally found that helps with that is excuse me, is sharing those with people in similar situations. So you mentioned Greg Bice, who has young kids. He can relate. He's lived or what you're living. And I think one of the other things, and again, you and I have had previous conversations about this, and it's what spurred me to even want to do this in the first place, is your consistent communication with other coaches. We talk a lot about the lacrosse world being a fraternity, but I think one of the things that is not understood is the fraternity of coaches, and the idea that even though on the sidelines we are not the best of friends for 48 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is,
Right.
there is a love and respect within the profession that I think truly is not understood. So talk a little bit about how you've leaned on other coaches that are probably rivals of yours, that have also helped you in these opening weeks of these challenging times?
Right, right. So I've got probably about 4 different group chats that are going on between different sets of coaching friends, right? Um, and kind of the one I speak with, I speak with 3 of them on a daily basis, and it's a lot of it is, hey, how are you doing? How's everything? How's everything going with you? How are the boys doing? I've got one with St. Charles and Watterson. I mean, shoot, we did a virtual happy hour last week. We were just, it was different, definitely different. But it was good to be able to see their faces and talk together, and really meet. And one of the things that is great about it is that you can kind of share ideas and not necessarily ideas about X's and O's. I mean, every single conversation or tech group chats that I've had, virtual meetings like this, 0 of them have been about X's and O's or drills or, sharpening the tool as a coach. Everything has been about life. How are the kids doing? One group chat with coaches is a lot of just checking in and a lot of joking around with each other, right? The other one, it's talking about our feelings. How's everything going? Sharing old stories. I was texted a picture of Ted Wolford from, I think it was like 1981 or something like that, right?
And you've been coaching at UA for 20 years already.
Right, exactly. It's really relating back to life and using the sport of lacrosse to kind of, to, one, build those relationships, but 2, they know, like you said, they know where we're coming from and the mindset that we're in.
Yes.
And sure, we talk about, hey, if we potentially start up on this date, what do you think season looks like? We talk about that because we want to be prepared. But we also check in with each other, and make sure we're doing okay. I was sitting there, when I was kind of in my funk about what happened with baby Jack. I was reminded it was the old Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers Neighborhood deal from 9/11, right? He was the only one that could give that speech on TV that everything was going to be okay. And and when he related it to don't look at the carnage and everything else that's happening down there. Look at the people helping people. And so
Yes.
and so when I was reminded of that, I made another post on social media the other day where it's like, well, yeah, you got this terrible disease that's in this virus that's out there, but look how fast things have progressed. Things like Battelle, the testing kits, and all the advances that
Unreal.
they're making. It's unbelievable. And you look at, and I'm not looking down on any other country, but no country comes back and comes together like the United States does, right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
so if you look at, forget Congress and the partisan divides and all that stuff, look at everybody else you got lacrosse companies making not ventilator, but making face masks. You have, they're making, face shields, things like that.
Yep.
No other country can repurpose and do these things as fast as we can. And so that's kind of my look. That's my looking at the first responders helping people, where it's like, what, I think that this is going to be, I don't believe the curves. I don't believe the flattening and all that stuff. I don't believe those timelines, because they don't factor in the American spirit and how quickly things can get developed. I mean, you're seeing all these different treatments out there, and you're seeing all these different, miracles that are coming out every day. Right. And so, so it was, if I hadn't been speaking with, with those coaches to help me kind of, keep my sanity as well as, maintain those relationships.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Then they wouldn't, that I wouldn't have changed my mindset like I did. That was another kind of press pause moment for me. A lot of times the players, they'll check in with the coaches, but a lot of times it's, parents sometimes have a hard time understanding that, yeah, we want Johnny to have a senior season, probably way more than you guys do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah.
And it's killing us just as much as it's killing you. Right. And so not only are we losing our coaching, the coaching aspect of everything, we're losing, it wasn't a season for us. It was a culmination of 4 years of working with a kid and seeing him realize his senior year. So it's those relationships, and it's not just one kid, it's every kid in the program.
Yep.
So, so it's heartbreaking times 40 or however big the program is.
Yep.
And so in being able to share with other guys that know what's going on, and kind of joke through it, and as well as keep each other's spirits up, that's really the most important thing. And, I definitely think relationships are a heck of a lot stronger,
Yeah, and I think just listening to the word that keeps coming up is relationships. And I think that one of the things that has, at least for me, has come out of this in the first couple of weeks is you really see the power of some of those relationships. And that's not to minimize other ones, but to me, at least in my experience, it's some of those key ones have really come to the surface. And you talked about the culmination of 4 years. It was, for us at Denison, it's watching those seniors sitting in a meeting read on Twitter that NCAA has canceled spring championships live.
Right.
We were watching them receive the news that their season was over in person before we even knew it. And there's not a lot of people that understand what that feels like as a player. There's definitely not a lot of people that understand what it feels like as a coach. And I was telling a couple guys that when you've got something special, and I'm sure that you would feel the same way about your team, just knowing you, is for us, we weren't upset because we lost the chance to have a really good team and get back to the Final Four. We were upset because we just didn't have a chance to be together anymore. And that was the part to me that made me realize just how special those relationships are. But also, I think the thing that I will take out of this in a positive way is recognizing the importance of it, and not taking it for granted, because it's not always there.
Right.
You don't always have those meaningful relationships, but times like these, I think, remind us all of who those are with and why they matter. But you talked about your players and the 40 guys, and kind of, it's not just the seniors, but it's all of them. And you've got freshmen that are new and learning the ways, and you got seniors that are trying to make one last run, and you've got all these pieces. If you could have the equivalent of calling a timeout and bringing your guys in person into a huddle together, and talking to them for that 30 seconds before sending them back to their homes to be quarantined and stay at home and shelter in place and all of that, what would your message be to those guys in that timeout?
My message would be, do your job. Right now your job is to, if you're John Smith, your job is to be John Smith. You're to be a good son, you're to be a good student, you're to be a good role model, and practice all the guidelines that have been given to you. And your job is to, right now, do your schoolwork, go about your day, adapt to everything that's happening, and make sure you stick to your time schedules and you stick to your, to the rules and everything that you've been given. That's the most important thing is, this is a terrible virus that's happening, but most importantly, you need to do your job. And right now that job is staying home, being still signing in and doing your schoolwork, as well as, keeping mom and dad in high spirits and staying safe yourself. One of the things that, kind of going back to your previous question, that last day, it's hard because, I had parents, they were like, yeah, Chris came home, or whoever came home crying. I'm like, I just watched 30 of my guys cry. When I talked to them at the end of this, at the end of the practice, and I have zero shame. I cry in front of my team all the time. If they do something emotional, I cry in front of them. I don't care.
Oh yeah.
But it's one of those things where, little things that you don't think about. Like, we never even got a team picture. So on my wall, this year will almost like it had never existed. Right.
Yep.
But one of the things that, I would also remind my team, by doing your job, you're still part of a team. You know, you know, and part of that is talking with each other and thinking about each other, right?
Yep.
And kind of where I'm going with this is that when I left the field that night and I was driving home, I got a voicemail from the girls coach over at DeSales. He's like, Matt, don't forget to get a team picture in case you guys don't meet up. I started crying on the way home because I'm like, I was like, I don't have a team picture with these guys. So I'm, you know, on my way home, I drive by Watterson and I see they're just breaking their huddle. And so I call Chris and I'm like, thank God, he picks up. He's like, what's up? I go, get a picture with your team. I was like, I left. I'm feeling like crap because I didn't get a picture. He goes, holy crap. I see it. Hangs up and I see them all get back together, you know, and
I love
he at
it.
least got, yeah, I mean, he got one, but you know, it's, and which is great for him. But had the girls coach not thought of me enough to call me, you know, he would be in the same boat and all three would have lost out.
Sure.
So,
No, that's an awesome story. And it's even better because it's the DeSales guy calling the Watterson guy.
right.
As we talk about, though, in all honesty, as we talk about things being bigger than a game,
Mm-hmm.
it's a recognition of, it's Coach Fanati recognizing to call you and you recognizing to call Coach Sauter. Like, and it's a perfect segue into my last question that I'll have for you. And it's this idea of, even my own kids get a little tired of it, about living your life under the mantra of being a good teammate. You talked a lot about in that huddle telling your kids, do your job, and now you're part of a different team. We're all part of a different team now, and I think that it's something that could be a huge positive that comes out of this for young and old alike. For Doesn't matter your politics, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter. I read something that said that this will be the first truly global experience,
Mm-hmm.
that 20 years from now, we could travel anywhere on earth and meet someone that went through the exact same thing we went through. And it was fascinating to me. And it really reminded me of this idea of, we're now all in it together, truly. And now more than ever, we all need to be good teammates. And you've alluded to it throughout this entire talk. But if I were to ask you to finish this sentence, how would you finish the sentence? To be a good teammate is to be
Thinking of others. Um, you know, thinking about other people, you know, not everybody has the same stress that's happening. So some people, you know, they could be retired and could have already, you know, pulled everything out of their 401ks and whatnot, and they own their house free and clear. And this really isn't affecting them other than just being bored. Um, some families, they literally lost everything. You know, they, like maybe mom and pop they owned and worked in the same shop, and you know the shop gets shut down. So thinking about others, you know, I think that like one way you can do that is, you know, if you have the means to, you know, go out and get, you know, have DoorDash or delivery from a local restaurant, or you know, from somebody else. You know, if you can part with $20, you know, $30 for the night, that other family needs that, right? So that's thinking of others. Thinking of others is, you know, checking in on, hey man, how's it going? You know, I've gotten I've gotten text messages throughout this whole thing, and one of, you know, there's kind of divides the, you know, the coaching world into two different camps. You know, I've got one that are thinking about other people emotionally. Hey, how are you doing? How's everything going? Just want to check in on you. And then there's other ones that are, you know, well, if we were to do such and such date, how would you do a regular season or anything else like that? So, you know, so there's kind of two different camps. But you know what? Think of others. You know, in the E plus R equals O session, you know, you've got step. You have a step in there. It's called make a difference, right? Because your E, or I'm sorry, your R is an E for somebody else. So your response to a situation is an event for somebody else. So think about how you're going to respond to that person, whether it's a kid to a kid, a kid to a parent to a coach, coach to coach. Think about them. Think about others and what you can do for them. You know, you see a lot of posting on social media and whatnot about, hey, something as simple as toilet paper. I've seen, on some of the like the next door apps and stuff, some people are like, hey, you know what, I've trying to go to the store for the last 4 days. They've been out of toilet paper. Someone will post in there that goes, hey man, I got some, here you go, here, you just pick it up from my porch, no charge.
Yep.
So that's thinking of others, and helping out where you can. If you've got something somebody else needs and you don't need it, by all means, let them have that extra lawnmower that you got in your garage, or from your father-in-law, things like that. I think just think of others in this situation.
That's awesome. I think I think the idea of being a community is something that, my wife and I, we moved our family out here to Granville a little over a year ago now, actually closing it on 2 years. And I was talking with a friend of mine that lives in Chicago, as they kind of hunker down and brace for what they're hoping isn't the equivalent of New York, but they're kind of prepping for that. And he was asking, how it was going here. And I said, I've never been happier to live in a community of people that, exactly like you said, that think of others. The outpouring of just what can we do to help has been incredible. I think that within the lacrosse community, you mentioned Cascade, East Coast Dives, String King. I'm probably forgetting some others. Immediately, it felt like stepped up and we're making protective, like just the thought process of being able to flip the switch quite literally, and be able to produce something that you've never produced before, is amazing. And I think that everything that you've spoken to today has kind of all revolved around two things for me. Is one is relationships, and two is exactly what you just said, thinking of others. And I want to thank you for being the first person to hop on here, and also sending me a list of some folks to reach out to about doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's an opportunity for someone, and maybe it's me, to help folks like you share these ideas and thoughts with a lacrosse community, and maybe even a broader community that are really struggling, and that look to some voices that they know of, for some reassurance. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to offer that to those folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for reaching out. I think it's a great idea, and it's one thing where all the coaches, we know what each other are feeling, and and it's a great opportunity for us to talk to some of those kids out there who feel like they're alone and don't know what to do, and kind of how they or even some of those young coaches where you get a coach that's 20 years old, 21 years old. He's not going to be as prepared as a guy that's been I've been coaching 20 something years now, and with a couple kids. So it's good to be able to kind of talk about what others are doing.
Sure. No, I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm going to be reaching out to some other folks. Anybody who tunes in and watches this or listens to this that would be interested in coming on and sharing your thoughts and stories and everything through this, be it in the lacrosse community or not. Definitely reach out. But I definitely want to thank Coach Triplett for taking the time and being guest number one on episode number one of, I don't even know what this is going to be called yet. But I figured it was more important, as they say, if you're not kind of embarrassed by the first product, then you waited too long to put it out there. So thank you for being the first episode. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Happy to help.
Stay safe. Good to hear about baby Jack, and
yeah.
Good luck with Disney Plus.
Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, buddy. You too.
Family on three. 1, 2, 3. Family.